Hello, this is in response to Maya's question about the terminology of strikes. One thing you need to remember about garrote is that it was never a single art. It never had a single root. Most of the information on garrote pretty much comes from the middle of the 19th century. Um, You had a lot of immigrants from the Canary Islands who have a tradition of stick fighting. Most families there have their own types of sticks they like to use in terms of thickness, in terms of length, in terms of how they like to hold and grip the stick. You had a lot of people, families from southern Spain, Basque people from the north of Spain. You had a lot of noblemen, and who knows what kind of arts they trained and where they trained. Then you had the ex-veterans from Wellington's campaign during the Napoleonic Wars. A lot of Scots, Irish mercenaries, English mercenaries, young men out of a job looking for work. They came down. They were well known for their bayonet work, muskets, cavalry swords. You had elite Venezuelans who trained in Europe fencing, and so one thing you'll notice, or I noticed reading the old text, is that the authors drew distinction between military arts and civilian arts, between people who train the saber and people, the different local styles of garrote that existed by the mid-19th century. And so even back then, people drew distinctions between these different arts. So we bring it up to 20th century, and where I did my research in 2005 was just a small little area in north midwestern Venezuela. There was one big city of 500,000 people called Barquisimeto, and then about 30, 40 miles away was a smaller agricultural town called Carora with maybe 150,000 people. And then there was a few small towns and even smaller hamlets and rural collection of huts out there in the middle of nowhere. And there's many different lineages, different, for lack of a better word, called styles of garrote. And people were very individualistic. And people would train with many people over the years if they were lucky. Bits and pieces here, bits and pieces there. Sometimes they belonged to a family or knew a garrotero. They were able to learn a complete system. But past 3 generations, pretty much nobody knew what the heck was going on, how the art developed or where it developed from. People didn't really care. There was illiteracy was the norm until the 1960s. Up to the 1940s, sugarcane was like the major export producer. Not the major export producer, it was a major crop in Venezuela, in Midwestern Venezuela. And they still relied on medieval technology. They still relied on water wheels. They still relied on wood-burning furnaces. The workers, they were not paid cash money. They were paid company script. They were given a little bit of land outside the house where they could stay, where they could grow a few vegetables. Malaria, cholera, dysentery, illiteracy was rampant. And, not a lot of roads, as I said earlier. The roads were put down in the 20s and the 30s by the dictator Gomez to move his army from all around Venezuela to put down the local regional caudillos or strongmen who ruled like feudal leaders in their own little fiefdom. They had the power of life and death over people. And so taking this back to terminology, every person you meet who does garrote, they're going to use different words, different terminology. So it doesn't really matter. I'm showing you stuff, mostly the palo sangriento. The solo drills are from the siete linea style. And the palo sangriento, they didn't really have a lot of names. Like, you strike to the shin, it's a strike to the leg, palo a las piernas. Strike to the knees, palo a las piernas también also, or a palo a rodilla. A strike to the belly is a palo a barriga, strike to the belly. Strike to the chest is a palo a pecho. Strike to the head, a palo a la cabeza. There's a term, revés, that Maya was using. Revés just refers to backhand. So any strike, you can do forehand, you can do a revés strike, backhand. She mentioned a strike called the huevero. It's just, that's a huevos is a term for eggs. You know, it's a slang term for a pair of testicles. I know four words, four terms to describe this strike. Abaseado, a barrecampo, barajuste, and a huevero, depending on whose style you're learning from. Cuadras. I'm showing you one cuadra we use in the siete líneas style, but these different schools, all within like maybe a 50-mile radius, all had different types of cuadras. And some schools had no cuadra. They didn't teach by cuadras. They taught by llamadas, or calling postures, like you'll see in some of the garrote videos. These are postures where you put yourself, you deliberately open yourself up, an invitation to be struck, and then you fight from there. You learn, you move from there. Capoeira has, Angola has llamadas too. This one and this one. And then the head on the chest one. I was told by one of my capoeira teachers, Bohachas, llamadas are very dangerous. Harimau Penjak Silat, taught by Richard Crab de Boards. He teaches through postures or llamadas too, versus drills or anything like that. And so there's a worldwide tradition of people teaching through llamadas. That's one of the llamadas used in garrote. That's one of the llamadas used in garrote. This is a llamada used in garrote. There's many of them. And I never met anybody who taught through llamadas. I heard about it. I went into the area looking for people, but nobody would talk to me, which is typical. Didn't have any introductions into the families who knew it. And befitting its rural character, there's a grand mistrust of strangers, so it just makes me even more grateful for the people who actually took the time out to teach me and teach me right. Because some of my teachers made a bunch of stuff up and taught me that, or taught me some dance moves and never really taught me how to fight. Anyways, Maya, I hope that answers your question.